everyone. Today we are going to talk about pollination. Pollination is something that we briefly discussed when we studied plants, and we read this story from Seed to Plant by Gail Gibbons. And in this book, we learned about the parts of a flower, and we learned about what needs to happen in order for pollination to take place. We're going to review that for just a little bit today. First, I wanted to share with you this sheet right here. And it says, the most important role a bee has for humans is pollination. Bees pollinate 30% of our world's crops and 90% of our wild plants. A bee has a furry body, and their bodies get covered with pollen as they are searching for nectar in flowers. The bee then flies to another flower, and the pollen it picked up at a previous flower rubs off and at the new flower. This helps make seeds. Then more flowers will grow. This is known as pollination. Bees play a big role in pollination. We're going to read a couple pages again from a book by Gail Gibbons about bees. At each flower, the forager bee collects nectar with her proboscis. She stores the nectar in a special part of her body called the crop or honey stomach. We did learn that bees have two stomachs. This stomach is separate from her other stomach. As she goes from flower to flower, she comes in contact with a yellow powder called pollen. Some of the pollen is collected in little baskets formed by the special hairs on her hind legs. Here are the pollen baskets, and here is the proboscis as she is collecting the honey. As the forager bee collects nectar, she carries pollen from flower to flower. This is part of a process called pollination. Can you say that with me, please? Pollination. When she has visited many flowers and her crop is full, she beelines back to her hive. Let's look closely at this little picture here. Pollination is the movement of pollen from the stamen to the stigma of the same kind of plant. This makes seeds to grow new plants. And we've read also a book by Gail Gibbons, From Seed to Plant. And I'm going to go back to the part in this book that shows us the parts of a flower. And here we see this is the stigma and this is the stamen. So now the pollen from the stamen needs to be transferred to the stigma in order for pollination to take place. Let's reread this page. Before a seed can begin to grow, a grain of pollen from the stamen must land on the stigma at the top of the pistil. This is the pistil, this is the stigma. The stamen, the pollen needs to get over here. This is called pollination. Here is another book that I have about bees. This is a National Geographic Kids book titled Bees by Laura Marsh. Bees by Laura Marsh. Here is the table of contents. We're not going to read the entire book, but I would like to learn a little bit more about the topic of pollination. So I'm going to go to pollen powder on page 8. Pollen powder. Powder. Mrs. Walkowski, what powder? Power. Your eyes are playing tricks on you again. Mrs. Walkowski. Okay, let's read that again. Pollen power. When a bee lands on a flower, the flower's pollen rubs off on the bee. Pollen sticks to tiny hairs on the bee's body. Look at how this bee is covered with pollen. When the bee travels to another flower, pollen from the bee brushes off onto the new flower. This is called, everyone together, pollination. Now the new flower can start to make
seeds. No way. This is incredible. Take a look at this photograph. A bee's leg has special hairs that form a basket, and this is for the first time that I actually see how the little tiny hair are forming a basket. Empty pollen basket. These pollen baskets are filled with pollen. Only female bees have them. Wow. The bee brushes pollen into the basket, then it flies back to the nest. This pollen is used as food for baby bees. Bees collect nectar from flowers too. They drink nectar with their tongues. Tongue on a bumblebee. Wow, is this so long? It's longer than its antennae. Incredible. Again. Some bees make honey out of nectar. These bees are called, what do you think? Honeybees. Nectar, a sweet sugary juice that flowers make. Now, boys and girls, we've learned a lot about bees. We have learned from these books. We've read many of them. This book we've been reading piece by piece because it has so much information. All these wonderful books, all this fun information. But today I want you to remember this big word, pollination. As an assignment today, I want you to explain to your parents what pollination is and why is it so important to us. Bye. I'll see you again tomorrow.